Welcome to the next in our short series of video interviews. What's next post COVID-19 to our senior HR leaders. Today, delighted to say that I have Susanna Yallop, who is the Chief People Officer at Starling Bank. So good afternoon, Susanna.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Susanna, I think what would be good to start if you could just let us know a little bit more about you and your role with Starling Bank and kind of how long you've been there in a little bit more detail, so we can get to know more about you.
Yeah, sure. So I am the Chief People Officer at Starling. I have been working with Starling. Well, actually, I've been in this role for about 12 months. Prior to that, I spent quite a lot of time with Starling because I had my own HR consultancy business. So I was working with them on the consultancy side. Starling, for those of you who don't know, is a digital bank founded in 2014 by Anne Bowden, and rapidly growing. So hence coming in to help build an HR function and now running the team. So we have just short of about 1,000 people at Starling now, and that's grown significantly over the last couple of years.
All right. Okay, let's get underway then, and let's look at this first question. So we, as I said at the start, we kind of evolved these a little bit as we've gone along. So let's kind of look at reflecting on the last 6 months of the COVID crisis. What are your key insights and takeaways? And I guess for you, your organisation and your leadership team. So what have you seen?
Yeah, so I think one of the key things is how resilient people can be, and our team and our employees have been extremely resilient in going into this situation. And it was quite an easy transition for us. We're a technology company, so we had the technology, and it was just a matter of deploying it in a different location, really. So it was very smooth to get us all out working remotely, people have responded really well to this new way of working. So there's still great connectivity amongst the teams, and actually from an organisation, commercial perspective, it's been a very successful few months for us. I think the couple of things that stick out for me. One is the importance of communication. So increasing that communication, especially when you're not having those kind of, incidental office kind of situations where you bump into someone and have a chat. So being proactive around communications. So we've done quite a bit on that over the last few months, and a focus on wellbeing, of course. People being, more isolated from perhaps they have been previously, dealing with some, situations in their personal life. Many of us have done homeschooling, we've been caring, all of those other things in addition to your day job. So wellbeing has become a big focus.
And I guess have you been absolutely sort of 100% remote working for your teams?
Yes.
Employees?
Yes. So everybody was out, and the offices were essentially closed for a period of time until the government said you can start to go back. And now our offices are open. There are a couple of people in the offices, but again, we're in that phase again where the government have made different decisions. And so really we're focusing now on the well-being of our staff and where does it make sense for them to be, and listening to individuals' needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're finding the difficult part about all of this is the chopping and changing and having to adapt each time to the new set of circumstances.
And it's different.
So
it's different for each location, right? Because it depends on a number of things. So we have our London office, and we have Cardiff and Southampton. A lot of people in our London office will be travelling by public transport, which may not want to do that right now. Others in Cardiff or Southampton might have different options which would get them to the office safer. So it's really down to the individual.
Yeah, and that's it. And the public transport piece of organisations who have offices in big cities has been a major anxiety for many employees, isn't it? So just quickly then on Susanna, on the let's talk those two things. So you talked about the well-being piece. So what can you give us a sense of the sort of things you've been doing with the employees to sort of sort of keep a check on them at these times?
Sure. So right at the beginning, we set up a campaign, for want of a better word, called Never Home Alone, where we pushed out lots of content to our employees, and it had sort of a 4 weekly cycle. So 1 week focusing on mind. So some of the activities that we did there was have people come in to talk to us about resilience and anxiety, and how to cope in periods of change. The second week was around body, so looking at fitness. So we ran some kind of how many steps can each team kind of do in a week. Then we looked at development. So we've actually used this as a good opportunity to share what other roles there are at Starling. What do people do here? And I think that's been a really a good thing that's come out of this, is that we can sort of showcase different people and different roles, and so people can start to think about their own personal development and whether or not that's a role that they might want to go into. And the fourth area was nutrition. And a lot of that was about good nutrition, but also sharing a lot of baking.
Yeah, very good. I like that. And I guess, and you're using online platforms to deliver that, and pretty
Yeah.
good sign up for that, or is that pretty much everyone?
Yeah, very good sign up. We use Slack as an organisation, so we've pushed out a lot of content through that, and then video sessions where we've interviewed people or had people come in and talk to us via that.
Okay, good. And you mentioned then, obviously, at this point of individual circumstances in the house. So you're obviously doing lots of surveys or sort of pulse surveys. Is that what you're doing to kind of ascertain where the next steps really?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've surveyed our staff on a couple of occasions over the last few months, and I've really seen phases and transitions in over those last few months. I guess the focus for us now is thinking about how do people feel longer term. They've had quite a long period now working from home, and what flexibility can we provide in order to support people's lives and to actually build on that, because why wouldn't you try and get the best of both worlds? Some office life, some working from home. And what's I think really a key point is that the office setup never didn't always work for everybody, yet that was the norm, right? And we expected everybody, regardless of their working situation or their life situation, to sort of be in the office generally. And actually, it doesn't suit everybody. It doesn't suit everyone from the way that they like to work or the way that they like to balance their life. So we're trying to think about that now creatively and think actually, one size certainly doesn't fit all, and how can we build a kind of inclusive working culture?
I'm kind of going into question two a little bit there, aren't I? So, but absolutely. So I think we're at this point now. So let's move on to Q2 then, which is really from those, I guess, those forced changes that have happened to date. I guess, yeah. What do you believe that your employees kind of, I guess, expect the mix to be or want to keep from all of this, and how is that kind of panning out?
Yeah, so I think this is the flexibility piece. We have surveyed staff to ask them what their personal preferences are, and we're looking at it, from how does our organisational design need to look, and our location strategies need to look, and then down to the individual level to make sure that people's well-being is supported, to look at the roles that they're doing, how they're doing them, and what technology, any additional technology they may need in order to do them. So lots of different questions, and then of course you get into the kind of contractual pieces.
Yeah. So at this point in time, is it too early to say of a sense of what that split? Or I think we're seeing certainly this conversation piece around how the office will be for the future. Will it be collaboration hubs, or would it be used far less? Are you kind of at that point? And there's lots to talk about there's a 70-30 split in favour of people working remotely. Where are you kind of within your employees?
Still a little bit early to say for us exactly what we'll be doing and how it'll, it'll settle at the end. I think one of the things is thinking about the office and how you would use that space. So what's the purpose of coming together and using that space? Is it really necessary for you just to sit and do your job sitting next to somebody else? Or actually is the office space there to, have, good, quality meetings where people can come together and share ideas and that kind of thing. So more of a kind of a different working, kind of project working kind of situation. And it could be that teams come into an office to set a project up. They're in the office for a couple of weeks and then they go away and start, delivering on that project and come back. It could be that the space is used for more sort of social activities where just teams get together and enjoy time together. So we're thinking through those ideas at the moment.
And then one of the challenges is we mentioned at the start is the engagement piece, isn't it? Because so obviously a lot of this is around the culture piece in the office. But so how do you? I guess that's the biggest one to tackle to some degree.
Yeah,
Sort of
so I
keeping
think
that engagement.
yeah, and we've done a lot of hiring over the last few months as well. So I'm pretty conscious that there are lots of people who joined Starling that actually have never met in person any of their team or their colleagues. And so that's something that we dealt well with in terms of the onboarding of new staff. But it'd be really nice to get them together so they can see all their new cohort and that they can, build those relationships. So things like that, I think, is where you will start to use the offices, when government, guidance allows, I guess. And I think the other thing about engagement is the communication piece. We're a growing organisation, and even prior to COVID, we were starting to find the difference between us being a very small organisation and a bigger organisation in terms of communication. So, Anne, our founder, she would, be there and would talk to people in London a lot. Well, once you've got more than one office, how do you then deliver that message and those communications? So we already had those questions. And actually, one of the real benefits out of this is that we've found ways of delivering communication to a lot of people. And I think it's really important that we keep that up now. So Anne does a session 3 times a week, which is just a 15 minutes Ask Anne session. And that's kind of built out slightly with Ask Anne or Ask one of your kind of colleagues. So we have different people talking to us about their roles, about their life and what they're doing at Starling. And everyone gets an opportunity to ask those questions. So it's just, a great opportunity to ask what you want, really.
No, I think that's really key. I think at the moment, and that obviously remote onboarding. So I guess you mentioned a lot of recruitment. So and how has that whole process gone? Because obviously that's slightly different to the way you would normally do it.
Yeah, it is slightly different. And I guess again, we're a technology company, so from that perspective, we can make it work. But it's been about trying to get those people to understand the connections with Starling when you can't see the connections, which I think is difficult when you're doing it like this. But hopefully those people are settling in and spending time with the people they need to, even if it's over a screen.
Yeah. And one final thing on technology and virtual, working really. This has come out on a number of occasions in terms of this having the right people at meetings wherever has been much more feasible in a funny sort of way. So not so much about hierarchy, or have you found that in terms of when you've got a project and you've got meetings that need to take place, all walks or all levels of people have been engaged and brought in or
Yeah,
not?
it probably hasn't made much of a change for us because I think probably that's more the way that we worked before. I mean, a small, rapidly growing business, and everyone, we try and get everybody involved. And I think Starling is, if you're going to make your career at Starling, it's very much about, getting out there and rolling your sleeves up and doing it. So we expect everybody to get involved and to put their thoughts and ideas forward. So actually, it's probably similar to the way we've always worked.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense with the growing company. I get it. Okay. Let's move on to question 3 then. So 3 is all about opportunities, because as much as this is a crisis, we've got to take some positives here, and I think there's a lot of potential we're finding. So from the, I guess from the exploring the learning from the crisis so far, and I always, we also find this sense of purpose, a moral purpose as well for the organisation and your employees. How do you see this panning out for you, your HR function, and your employees going forward?
So one of the things that our CEO Anne has said is about using technology for good. So, you can look at technology as being the thing that actually, pins us down in some ways, or, and actually we look at it from the other perspective. Actually, if you've got the right technology, it can enable you to live your life the way that you want to live your life. And it's the way that our product works in terms of from a banking perspective. And I think, this remote working situation, if you've got the right technology, you can really make it work for the organization, but you can also make it work for people balancing their own life. So I mentioned at the beginning, when we were in the offices, I didn't work full time in London. I spent some time at home, and I was able to do that. So I think that using that on a broader scale is definitely something that we can learn from.
And so I guess as a young growing company, you've a lot of these things were set in terms of your journey already, and it was probably very different to the normal, that we talked at the front, the legacy bank. So I guess you started with a blank sheet of paper, and okay. So I guess what is there anything else that in this short period, say short period, we said it's over a year of COVID now, isn't it? But is there anything within that framework and the learning from that, other than the flexible piece, that you think you look to do differently or planning to do differently?
Yeah, I think the next ideas in terms of from our team perspective will be deepening the learning and development piece. So I think we, in terms of the evolution of the business, it was always going to be now that we were going to start building that. We've got an organisational size now which will allow us to do things that perhaps a smaller organisation doesn't need or isn't required. And so we're definitely deepening the development piece, and how we do that via this kind of setup, and use the best of what we've got in order to do that. Plus, as I talked about, once we get back into spaces, how we use those spaces, it could be for development. So I think that's one piece. And the second piece would be thinking about internal communications, and really strengthening our focus on that, because the things that we've done as part of this as a necessity now have to be part of our life, and it's building on that.
Yeah. I mean, I did looking a bit more about the ethos behind the organisation as well. There's this thing about inclusivity. I think that was really strong in terms of that diversity of kind of thought and people, and how you treat people, and equally the financial piece, isn't it, in terms of making it demystifying. I think you talk about it, money. So I like that educational piece about taking all the kind of technical side away, isn't it? Is that part of the ethos, really?
Yeah, exactly. We want to keep it simple. We want people to be able to manage their money, manage their their affairs, and I think that from a product perspective is the same from our people perspective, as in we do keep it simple in the way that we run things. We don't like to have a lot of bureaucracy and around the things that we do, and we do give people the opportunity to voice, to have their voice heard. And like I said earlier, in terms of the Ask Anne sessions, anyone can ask anything. And Anne has been very open about that. There are no wrong questions. You put your question down and you'll get an answer. And you do.
Okay, good. So finally then, Susanna, let's have a look at, this is you personally. So obviously, as I talked to a lot of senior HR leaders going through these incredible times, and HR being such a pivotal part of what's going on at the moment. So how are you finding it? How have you found this kind of really disruptive time as a senior HR leader, and personally, how has it been for you?
So one of my, I asked one of my team, and she said, you should say tiring.
Yeah.
But I think, there's been, Starling itself is a highly driven organisation. So, that's the pace at which we work is extremely high, in a good way and in normal time, shall we say. And this really hasn't been any different from that. It's just a matter of we're in a different location and just carrying on the same. So I think, from that perspective, we've our culture kind of lends itself to this kind of change and able to easily adapt and to flex. And I think from an HR perspective, I think it's been challenging. I don't think people had written a lot about how you would end up doing this if there was a global pandemic. But I think it's been quite exciting, and I think people have really risen to that. And I think in terms of learnings for our leaders, just spending some more time thinking about people's well-being. They really have thought about that, now perhaps more than when people were just doing the ordinary thing of going in and out of the office. So I think it's there's a lot of good things that will come out of it.
So yeah, I think what's important is we found is the empathy with leadership teams and leaders, and I think everyone's been able to kind of have a look into the window of everyone's life, per se, because it's been virtually being shown day to day.
Yeah.
So which has been refreshing. It's got to be about the opportunity, as I said at the start. We've got to learn from this, and I think there is an awful lot of learning going on for this new better, isn't there? So I think you'd agree. And you personally, though, so tiring and just not exhausted, but you sound quite energized and excited about the opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, Starling is a fantastic place to work, and I have a fantastic team, and we will really actually relish that opportunity of being part of a part of this change, I think. And it has been exhausting, but in some senses energizing, because you're doing new things, you're doing things differently, and there's definitely an opportunity for change, further change. So I think it's a good time to be doing this, really.
Right, Susanna, I think that's everything. I think I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I'll just end up and say to everyone that let's join us next time when we talk to another senior HR leader, and very much looking at the new better and the opportunities ahead. But thank you very much, Susanna.
Pleasure. Thank you, Peter.